Thank you, Riv. Both teams playing a very patient game there. Gravity coming out on top in the end. I feel like the elongation of the game can mostly be attributed to the fact that we have, poke siege engaged team versus poke siege disengaged team.
Yeah.
Yep.
There was a long portion of that game, I'd say the first 40 minutes, where the gameplay was relatively clean. The last 15 to 10 minutes of the game was a mess, honestly.
Yeah.
But Dignitas fell behind. They were a poke team against another team with poke, except they didn't have the engage thing. So they were just kind of doing what they could do, and Gravity was playing a safe and measured game for a long time.
And what I really like about Gravity is actually specifically the Morgana pick and how it played into this game. Because it allows them to play all these long-ranged, high-damage champions, and then have a way to actually have them hit someone. You hit a Dark Binding, you can layer the Azir damage, you can layer the Corki damage, and cool things really happen here. We saw First Blood on Crumbs because of this. And what really made that special as well is the specific interaction it has against Janna. Because what Dignitas is trying to do is play this very disengage-heavy composition. And be like, well, if you dive us, we'll disengage you with Janna. But like Azir, Corki, and Dark Bindings are immune to Janna knockbacks, essentially. Not to mention the Black Shield itself making you further immune, but just the fact that this defensive counterpick has zero impact on your engage was really stellar. And it was great play by Bunny Fufu. Every time they wanted a siege, they roamed him out of bot lane for a red buff invade. They roamed him out of bot lane for mid turret. They roamed him out of bot lane for top turret. And he was, I think, really instrumental in all the progress that Gravity made.
Yeah, and when you end up getting a pick with a disengage composition, it's so hard to capitalize on it. They were barely getting any turrets. They were barely getting anything. When they did find picks in the jungle, they had Azir on the opposite side on Gravity just zoning off Dignitas the entire time after they would get something that they should have been able to capitalize on, but because of the compositions and the way that they clashed against each other, they couldn't.
Threat of the Morgana binding definitely played a huge role in that game. I want to go all the way back to the beginning though, because we saw Gravity pull off the red buff invade and then had that immediate level 2 gank by St. Vicious mid, which actually did a fair amount in terms of setting Crumbs behind in the jungle. We saw him at an experience disadvantage the entire time. And Jat, you were talking about how that severely limits his ability to counter gank and get any of his lanes back into the game.
Yeah, the early gameplay was actually pretty clever by Saint. I liked the straight red to red, but specifically it preys on Crumbs' refusal to just farm. He always wants to set up a counter gank, even when he's behind in experience. Like, he did a pretty good job taking control of the crabs. However, if you're doing that, you do that and then make sure you get the experience elsewhere. The crabs give you gold, the crabs give you vision, but they do not give you levels. And because he was underleveled, it opened up later invade opportunities again and again, and it also greatly diminished his ability to, instead of counter gank, just gank, because if he does get counter ganked, he's guaranteed to lose. It's a recurring pattern for Crumbs. He is underleveled, his ganks aren't working because of it, and Dignitas' lanes just get pushed until the game's over.
Yeah, and I have to really commend Gravity's sort of playing around that aspect. We never saw Saint try to gank the lanes. Not really. He ran around, farmed his jungle, played Jarvan, tossed a flag, then hit minions faster.
Yeah, well, they invaded red buff on multiple occasions.
So those were cool, right? But he's not going for these like lopsided, okay, if like when you gank and counter gank, you're either like diving a turret, which is a risk to be the diver, and a counter gank works, or you're ganking someone who's pushed up, arguably over-leveled, has a bigger minion wave, and the counter gank means, well, we have a bigger minion wave, we win the fight. When you're going for just a dedicated invade, you're fighting on equal terms, more or less. And that was the only aggression we saw from Gravity, fights that would be on equal terms, not against bigger waves, not against a turret. And knowing that Crumbs, wards deep, tries to counter gank everything, he was like, screw that, I'll just out-farm you because Jarvan's better at that than Lee Sin. Scales better than Lee Sin. None of the lanes were actually gankable, despite the fact that he picked this early game jungler in Lee Sin. And yeah, Crumbs had nothing to do, and props to Gravity for making that so.
Yeah. To be a little bit kinder to Crumbs, once they fell behind, there wasn't much they could do. I mean, when they're picking Janna Lee Sin over Gnar, they're very clearly saying, we're going to poke you. But in order for poke compositions to set up, they need to be able to push the lanes. As soon as the lanes started losing, there wasn't much they could do.
Yeah, and we saw CS advantages slowly making their way into top lane, into bottom lane in favor of Gravity. And then you kind of have to affect those lanes with a jungler, but they're just so safe. Gnar, Corki, there was nothing you could really do about it.
Well, and, props to Gravity for properly playing their team comp. And that's what I have to say. My biggest takeaway from this game is the fact that Saint seemed to be, very confident in his shot calling all through the mid game. As you said, Jat, things started to devolve a little bit near the end game and get sloppy. But, I mean, that's huge for them to be able to rotate and take turrets without having to force fights, knowing that they can do so.
Yeah, the patience is a really big thing, and not overextending and not getting just too aggro. I know I can't do it. We play on a team together for I can't play poke.
You will dive in with any champion possible.
Any champion possible. I'll find a way to do it, even if it's a poke champion. Xerath, all in. But I give them huge props because the fact that they are able to shot call like that in the mid game, and then the late game, it kind of fell apart for Dignitas, and we saw some slip-ups there that actually cost them the game.
Yeah, Saint is nothing if not confident.
Yes.
Is one thing that always gives him a little bit of an edge on opponents. The game was pretty clean up until 40 minutes. Then it got really ugly. Kobe started losing his mind because they were backing when they should be pushing.
Yep.
They were deprioritizing objectives, and it appeared like something leaked into Crumbs' mind too.
I love that
Yeah.
soundbite of Kobe going, "What are you doing? You have a top lane and bot lane pushing. Go take."
That's what they spent 42 minutes setting up.
Right.
And they're just like, well, you know, Dragon's in but in a minute and a half.
Right.
So we should get items.
Let's go back and buy.
Never going to fight us.
Absolutely.
Can I play devil's advocate and say, like, hey, Dragon 5 is a good win condition, and, like, just play completely without risk, like, re-heal up, put the wards back down? Like, I'm not saying it was the right
can't.
odds-on choice, but certainly you can't completely complain about Dragon 5.
absolutely.
Consciously chose that, like dead outright. They were like, okay, they have to clear these minion waves. That'll give us time to go to Dragon and set it up because there was a minute.
I tend to agree.
And to their credit, they did secure the 5th dragon,
Yes.
and that was a huge factor in actually being able to close out the game. So I'll give you that.
Yeah.
I do want to jump though to a replay. 48 and a half minutes in, a questionable decision by Crumbs. For an engage, kind of like a last-ditch effort, but I don't feel like it needed to be.
This is called like, here you go, Gravity, you win. That's what I call this play. Let's just get into the replay
title.
right now because we talked about the 5 dragon buff and how they actually did have it, but they never did anything with it. They have 30 seconds left on their 5th dragon buff, and Gravity is running away from the base. They're done with this game. They're like, all right, I guess we're going to pressure Baron. We didn't do anything with 5 dragons. Let's roll it. Because Crumbs goes on a solo mission through a ward.
Well, they saw him.
Right? He didn't have like a raptor buff or anything to make sure he wasn't spotted. Yeah, sure, he's not in that specific brush. But what is the best case scenario kicking a support? You kill the support and die yourself, it still doesn't matter. They didn't kill the support. Crumbs is dead. And at this point, now they have no Baron threat. That was literally the end of the game as soon as he tried to make a play because they were holding on well. In some cases, Dignitas was turning the game around because they land Xerath poke and then finish things off.
It was
very sad.
not a very
I was very
profitable
sad.
choice by Crumbs.
Well,
You can see
it is.
that he was drawn to
Well, and it's not like he didn't have the option to back out.
Yeah,
There was no one behind him. Nar TP'd in, right? There was no one behind him. The same way he got into that bush, he could have walked right back out.
It felt like a desperation move. They saw that Nar was bot lane, TP takes 3.5, 4 seconds to channel. He was like, okay, if we get there in time, he almost had a 4-man knockup. Like, it was almost awesome. Okay, he missed, sure. And again, it was the wrong choice. In his mind, he's like, 3-man knockup, Nar's not here, Xerath hits everything, maybe that's the fight. They think they caught them on a flank. Obviously, that wasn't the case. And if he hit that kick, I want to see what would have happened, because he wouldn't have taken all the damage back as the knockup. But definitely an unfortunate misplay. Made it look worse than it was.
Yeah, I do not advise flanking with a poke composition, but it was the only way that they could engage. Because, like
Generally,
you said before, it was disengage versus hard engage, and that was the only difference between the poke siege comps. And he was trying a desperation move there. I do have to say, if you drafted Gravity or Dignitas in your fantasy league, you're not winning anything this week.
Not too many kills in that game.
I have SK and Fnatic.
Well, I
good
do
to
have
go.
to say again, a fairly well played game on the side of Gravity in terms of taking their early game, playing their comp properly through the mid game, closing out the game pretty solidly. Some questionable decisions on the side of Dignitas. Hopefully they can patch up some of that, with a new coaching staff or whatever it is. We saw that video where they're willing to give each other a lot of criticism within the team. So hopefully that dynamic will continue to grow and they'll be able to sort things out. We are just getting warmed up here, though. So after the quick break, Team 8 will battle it out with Coast. Stay tuned. Yeah, I think if they...
Profitable.
Profitable.
Our Gravity versus Team Dignitas. One shot.
Very
If Crumbs
low.
had hit that Q, he'd be... Oh, they got it!
Oh, but Fufu, he has the Zanyas. He can still use it. That's exactly what he was counting on, but he still gets popped.
He's gonna kick somebody right through the whole team!
Oh, they buddy. That's going to be the attack. Can they get in? They're not giving Dignitas any room to breathe. The Flash Gnar comes in. Haunter's in Mega Gnar form. That's going to be Gravity picking up another game in the spring split.